Well, good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to this Resources Rising Stars investor webinar. My name is Nicholas Reid from Reid Corporate, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you all. Thanks very much for your time this morning. It's my great pleasure to introduce Solstice Minerals, ASX ticker code SLS, for the first time to this webinar series. Solstice listed on the ASX in 2022 following the spin-off of the WA gold exploration assets of the successful African gold developer OreCorp. And in a short space of time, I think it's fair to say it's established what stands out as a compelling investment proposition in the junior resources space. I'll shortly hand over to Solstice's Managing Director, seasoned exploration executive Nick Castleden, to outline the key elements of that proposition. But before I do so, I'm going to steal just a little of his thunder by mentioning a couple of the company's key value drivers: a blue chip team with a strong track record of value creation, a strong cash balance of over 15 million at the end of the December quarter, a high quality gold exploration portfolio with active programs underway in the Eastern Goldfields, and of relevance recently, a significant track record of successfully transacting on resource assets, both with the sale of its Hobbs Gold Project in 2023 and most recently with the exciting news of the acquisition of the exciting Nanadie Copper Project in WA just last week. And finally, a market cap of just around 17 to 80 million, which must surely leave plenty of room for upside. As Nick runs through his slide deck, just a reminder to everyone who's listening in to please use the Q&A tab on your browser to log questions. We're very open to your questions. We welcome them, and I'm sure Nick will be happy to deal with them at the conclusion of his presentation. So, Nick, always great to catch up. Thanks for coming on this morning, and please take us through the Solstice story.
Pleasure, Nicholas. Good to see you. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you to everyone that's out there that might have joined us. If I could take a bit of your time this morning, talk to you in just a little bit more detail about the projects we've got on our books and why we really like them, and we're looking forward to taking the drill rig to them in this coming year. There's quite a few slides here. I'm just going to flick through them and get to the sort of more relevant ones, and then we can cut back to any questions if there are. So we've been exploring for a long time between us, a pretty experienced bunch of guys. We've got a big ground position for gold in the Eastern Goldfields to the northeast of Cal. And then, as Nicholas mentioned, we picked up this copper gold endowment last week, which we're very comfortable owning. We've got it for the right price, and we've got a really strong feeling we can make it bigger and maybe even hunt some better grade. Plenty of cash in the bank still. So in this deck, I'm talking about post-Nanadie transaction numbers. So these are adjusted cash balance of 14.2. And then, on the board side, we've done lots of previous transactions, so we sort of know what a deal looks like. We're quite active. Simple capital structure. Touch over 100 million shares out, trading at about 16 cents, 16, 17 million market cap, and about 14 cents a share cash of that 16 cents. So we've got pretty good capital shape and not undemanding value for the projects. And I think hopefully I can demonstrate that. A couple of small resources funds on the books that we're very happy to have there. They've been around for a while. I know both of those Nero and Precision groups very well. The board's got about 7%, and then there's some really well-known names like Jim sitting in the background with equity in this company. So quite sticky and pretty seasoned explorers on the books here. I'm an explorer. I'm a geologist. Been doing this for far too long, but we love the business of exploration. On the board, there's 3 geologists, all with exploration back history and some success, and an engineer that has worked for the big companies and also worked in the broking houses and done some analysis work. So we're sort of intentionally technical, top-heavy board. I like it that way because when new ideas come through the door, we can pull them apart and hammer a nail into them pretty fast, rather than sort of one person making the technical call. And we're active. So last year, I think we did 3 transactions. One of them put $10 million in cash into the bank. with an asset that didn't quite make scale for us. We've sold out 2 other tenement positions, and then just last week we picked up this Nanadie portfolio. So, happy to build the asset base wherever we can, and lose stuff that we think belongs with a neighbour or someone else. And then corporately, there's a bunch of transactions that the board has done over the journey, but our sweet spot is taking a good exploration idea, adding value to it, and then finding the producer, the sort of natural home. A couple of just introductory slides. We've got 2 centre of focus. This is the Eastern Goldfields area. It's all northeast of Kalgoorlie. There's 3 projects, but we really only talk to Yarrie these days. And I'll explain why we're really comfortable owning a very big tenement footprint for gold in this area. It's a proven field. There's some very major structures that run through there, and there's production in all directions, plus a lot of haul road infrastructure in place. And then last week we picked up this project in the Murchison. So this is 500 k's away from Yarrie, up to the northwest. It's just between Sandstone and Meekatharra. This is much more of a land that time forgot. Hasn't had the microscope on it nearly as hard. And sitting in the background out there is this resource of copper and gold. Quite a big endowment in a patch of bush under a bit of cover. We had one look at it and went, this thing can get bigger and it's the right price. So it's protected by a granted mining lease, which is a nice starting position. It's a nice little tenement footprint in the top end of a belt that really hasn't had a lot of work. So what I want to do is just show you a couple of the projects we're really excited by in the gold space, and then cut across back to Nanadie. This is a closer view of the Yarrie exploration kind of hub, looking in this instance at the magnetics and structural trends. There's a lot of information on the slide. I've pulled it apart in a conference recently, but we follow structure and we follow gold mineralization, which is all those yellow dots, and we follow that into wherever we can transported profile, where we have the most chance of finding something completely new and exciting. And that correlates to all of those red circles on that map. When we keep dreaming up new either magnetic targets or structural targets or geochemical targets undercover, where we can take an aircore rig and be the first guys in there to have a look at the underlying geology. And if you're going to do that sort of work, it's nice to be in an area there's plenty of gold around. So on that map, there's the Carosue Dam operations immediately south of us, and Northern Star's porphyry hub, smack in the tenement group, and Northern Star's trucking material from the north towards Carosue in quite a few places. Sunrise Dam up in the north east part of that map. The Saturn's heap leach, big play up in the northwest corner, and down in the southeast corner is the Rebecca project, which was something I was involved in a few years ago, and is now part of the Ramelius stable. So plenty of gold around, plenty of structure around, and plenty of targets where we think we could be the first people there. And then the aim of the game is turn some of those red shapes into yellow circles, and there are more advanced properties. So I'd like to show you a couple of prospects which we consider advanced. They go to RC drilling and potentially resource type work. Okay, firstly, just a greenfield play. This is one of many that we looked at last year. I think we tested 12 or so of these new areas. We'll keep doing so, but in the southeast corner, sorry, I can't show you with the cursor, but in the southeast corner of this plan, on the left-hand side, there's a prospect called Statesman's Well. That's one of our lead properties for an RC rig. If you follow that magnetic geology up to the northwest, you get into that elongate red ring there. That's where the same geology just dives off under 20, 30, 40 meters of transported cover. And in a stretch of about 4 kilometers there is not a single drill traverse previously. So late last year, we took the aircore rig in there, put the first ever drilling across the same sort of rocks as Statesman as well. And we initially got some anomalous gold and then came back, put an infill hole in and got a really nice hit of 6 meters at 1.8 at end of hole. And the very last meter of that is 3 grams, and it's really nice looking ferruginous silicified schist material with some quartz veins. If you want to find gold, you want to find it in a rock that looks good, and that rock looks pretty good. Good enough for us to come out with the aircore rig last week, and we straddled that mineralized hole either side and went north and south with a sort of step out traverse. And we announced that we'd done that work yesterday, I think, and effectively the samples are in the lab. They'll be what they'll be. We'll know in probably 2 weeks' time whether we're onto something. But it's really exciting work when you're the first people into an area and there's gold around. If we can establish there's gold in the strike extensions, then it's really exciting, and it's a really receptive market to hearing about new gold discoveries. So fingers crossed on this one. Right, and a couple of the more advanced properties for you. In fact, it is in the same geology. If you trend northwards along the same belt as Edgedeena Range, you get to this thing called Bluetooth. This is where the geology is exposed. It comes out of the ground. There's a trend of rock chips that we found gold in, and some old, pretty shallow RC drilling from the 80s and 90s. We came in here late last year with the RC rig, drilled 19 holes to understand more about it. And there's some really nice gold hits in amongst some folded rocks. There's some fold closures, and we got results up to 35 meters, 36 meters wide, and some nice gold around. Looks like it gets all the way to surface, so it's pretty easy to wrap your head around near surface resources here. And the important part of it, this part of the world, is that you're never too far from a haul road. These results are easily good enough to follow up, so we'll bring the rig back here, certainly if not this quarter, next quarter, for some infill drilling around those bigger hits. And then south of Edgedeena Range, I mentioned Statesman as well. There's another area where the geology comes to surface. There's little gold diggings in a banded iron formation type of suite of rocks. It's about 1 kilometre long mineralized trend, and there's kind of sporadic old RC drilling, and it is old and it's shallow along that kilometre. We can't see why they didn't drill in the whole lot back then, but we will, because there's nothing stopping it being continuously mineralized. But even in the drill database we've got, there's lots of 10 to 20 meter wide zones of reasonably mineralized material all the way to surface. We think it'll go into the fresh rock profile, so it's easy to get your head around some reasonable volume here. And again, just off the page in a plan view to the southeast corner there, there's a haul road that just takes you to Carosue Dam, if that's where it wants to go. And then I'll show you Bunyara. This is something we spoke about a lot late last year. It sort of sits in that kind of grey area between a greenfield play and an advanced play. This is the image on the right hand side is magnetics, but if I showed you a photo of this, it's just a patch of bush. There's no outcrop. You've got no idea what's there until you start drilling aircore holes. But what the magnetics said to us is there's a really interesting structural position where the geology goes from being northwest trending and it curves out to the east. There's some small granites around. There's some big granites around. It's just a handy looking area to hide a gold mine. And there was some early drilling that we've chased up and done multiple phases of aircore through transported profile and all that sort of stuff. And what it's telling us is there's gold everywhere. So there's quite clearly a mineralized cell here. We don't quite know where to really focus our attention, but we're pulling this apart now and looking at where would be the the best place to go and have a look at the fresh rock with an RC rig or a diamond rig, but certainly an RC rig to see what's causing all this gold in the oxidized rocks. So a fascinating play. Again, it's something that's just each time we go out there drilling, we find more gold, which is a nice place to be. So there's some examples of the gold work we're doing, and we'll keep doing this sort of work all through the year. The beauty of using the air core rig is it's really cheap and it's really fast, so we can get in and out without breaking the bank. And then zipping across to the Murchison, this is the acquisition we've made last week. Really interesting stuff. I'll just show you a few slides on it. I could go talk all day on what we're seeing here, but it's a skinny-ish greenstone belt. This is some magnetics on the right-hand side, showing some sort of blobby magnetic responses and less magnetic rocks around it. What that really is some mafic intrusive in and around felsic gneisses and granites. And on the left-hand side, you can see that it's pretty much typical flat transported profiles in this part of the world. A lot of work was done in the 60s and 70s looking for copper, and they're very good at finding it where it stuck out of the ground. Here it doesn't stick out of the ground, and it wasn't found. This was found by accident, really, by the gold explorers. But what's evident without squinting too hard already is that there's more magnetic responses in the neighbourhood that look like they could easily be worth a test, and they haven't been. And once you get outside of the main drill area, there's plenty of mineralised drill holes, and we're talking the magenta colours there are more than 1% copper. So you can see there's sort of 1% copper at the northern end and the southern end, and there's other responses that haven't been tested. And then inside the drill area itself, there's mineralised material in mag highs and mag lows, and it's not 100% clear that the system's fully understood, let alone either other repeats sort of laterally or elsewhere along strike. So you zoom in a bit more detail, and here's a kind of oblique view through all of the drilling in the mineral resource itself. When you turn these things on and you colour them up for grade, normally you expect to see drill holes in all directions around the edge of it with nothing in it. What's evident here is that everything's to some extent mineralised. There's one hole there you can see that's got nothing in it. That obviously didn't hit the right rocks at all, but the rest of it literally did hit the right rocks, and it has got copper in it. So we call it unconstrained. It hasn't been quantified, and that there's no drilling showing where the edges are, which is a fascinating place to start. And it gets us across the first step when we're looking at new projects and doing DD. The other bit that comes out when you colour it up is, and if we just focus on the magenta here, there's quite a lot of magenta around. That's all better than 1% copper, and 1% copper is by the looks of the data about 0.3, 0.4, 0.5 gold. So it's got real value, and in places it turns into really quite commercial, better grade intercepts, and there's an example of that in the core on the right hand side there, including some quite high grade gold. All the copper and the gold reports to sulfides in the fresh rock profile, and it looks like it's very clean chalcopyrite, pyrite, pyrrhotite dominant sort of suite of minerals. There's nothing strange about it. There's no quartz veining. It's not full of arsenic. It's very much got the look of a big mineralized mafic intrusion. And I've sliced and diced the resource block model to get a bit of a feel for it. So what this shows us in plan view on the left, and then a couple of sections on the right, is that firstly there's a lot of mineralization around, but when you interrogate the drill holes themselves and look at intercepts downhole, there's some really serious intercepts in there that are 40, 50, 60, 100 meters of grades that are better than the resource model. And oftentimes it's one hole all by itself, kind of unconstrained laterally or downwards. And then you can see on those two sections, there's no holes that really convincingly show the edges on the east-west, north-south sides. So when it's saying unconstrained, it could easily expand in all directions. In these slides, it's about 150 meters wide at the base of oxidation, and most of this mineralization is fresh rock. So it's a big footprint already, and looks like it potentially get bigger laterally as well as downwards. Excuse me. Last slide. This is looking now as a long section view towards the west. In the left-hand side, that's the big pink blob there. It's the resource area. I pulled this up because you can see that the deepest holes in the drill out. And when I say deep, they're less than 400 meters deep, so they're not deep holes in today's world. They've both got very serious intercepts in them, and when you interrogate both those holes in cross section, it's quite clear that they add volume rather than subtract volume. So it's really clear that deeper drilling can add more volume, and then in these magmatic systems, it could also help us with vectoring into some higher grades. So we like the scale. We like the potential for some better grade. We like the potential for additional material along strike. We just like it, and we like the price. So very happy to own it. And I think that's about it. We'll cross across to back to you, Nicholas, if there's any questions. But in summarising, we've got plenty of gold properties that we like to look of, and we'll stay busy. And it's a lovely marketplace to find gold. We've got Nanadie, which we'll do the technical work and pull apart and understand where the best place to spend the money will be this year. We've got plenty of money in the bank to do all of that, and we'll keep an eye on other opportunities as we go.
Thanks very much, Nick. That's a great run through. And just a reminder to everyone listening in, we have got some questions that have popped up, but please fire in your questions, use the Q&A tab on the webinar browser, and let's take advantage of having Nick here to answer them. So we'll spend the next 10 minutes or so just doing some Q&A. Nick, if I could maybe start with, you just made the point about gold discoveries, and we're seeing that there is a fair bit of interest in Greenfields gold discoveries. I think earlier this week, CalGold, or last week, CalGold announced a find on some ground that I think you're pretty familiar with. What's your take on the investor appetite at the moment for those sorts of discoveries? And I guess, that's ultimately the reason that you're doing what you're doing, isn't it?
It's fantastic when you've got for Cal and for Aurum and for ourselves, when you've got a market that's the gold producers are doing really well, and they're getting great valuations, and everyone's crying out for something that's a little further down the food chain. And in these times when it's just a shortage of new discovery news. So if you can genuinely talk to a new gold position in especially in an area that we all know and love, and it's pretty easy to get going. People don't have to imagine that there's value there. They can see there's value there, and companies get repriced straight away, which is really exciting for everyone. So yeah, it's a great time to go out there with a rig and find something new. It's a game of luck for us. We'll keep looking in all corners, but we get onto something like at Edudina Range, for example, then it's got great leverage.
Fantastic. And just a quick one on the slide there says you're up to upcoming catalysts with drilling. Can you give us a bit more, I suppose, granularity around timing on Bluetooth, Statesman Well, those sorts of opportunities?
Certainly. We're just waiting on the 1 meter resampling results from Bluetooth that'll guide us on where to allocate some extra funds there in terms of infill drilling. That won't be a gigantic program. We can get into that straight away. We just need to work out how to best place the rig on. There's a little hillock there we've got to work around. So we'll do some site work and get a rig on that. It's a great time of the market, actually. There's quite a bit of rig availability now. So we can get rigs coming and going quite fast. And then the other thing that we've just done is the Statesman's Well prospect I showed. That's now heritage cleared and it's good to go. So the team and I will sit down and design and finalise those holes. There's nothing stopping the rig mobilising there as soon as we've designed holes and got the sites going. So it'd be nice not to be 48 degrees, but we'll get out there and hopefully this quarter, if not very early next, with a decent sized program of work there. And in this Edgeadina range thing, if this comes in, we're ready to go on a whole bunch of step out lines there and infill lines, and we'll get really busy with the aircore rig. So that's short term. Nanadie's we'll give it 2 or 3 months of really getting into the weeds on the data, and then see where the best place to spend some money will be this year.
Excellent. Let's get into some online questions. Investor here says, thanks, Nick. Great job. Well done to the team. Can you let us know how much return after tax we get on cash reserves?
It's not a cash flow business. Hopefully we'll get a good share price return if we find something. No, we're not doing a cash back out of the funds that we've received from selling things, but we're happy to sell things. Maybe an indication of cash in the ground sort of versus exploration versus admin might. Yeah, we try to run pretty lean, Nicholas. So we're certainly in my history of trying to run as lean as possible. So we're conscious of making as much as we can of the cash into invoice drilling and really maximising our chances. We put our $10 million in the bank last year tax free because we'd spent that the equivalent amount of money exploring over the journey, and that's genuine exploration costs. Absolutely. Thanks for that. There's a couple of questions here about Nanadie. Investor says, understand where you're awaiting met work, but in the meantime, does the petrology give us an idea of where the gold is hosted? Is it in the chalcopyrite or the pyrite? We don't know. I just know from eyeballing the data, it's quite linear. So more chalcopyrite more copper equals more chalcopyrite, and more copper equals more gold. But we haven't got into the weeds on whether the gold is with the charcoal or with the other sulfides that hang around the chalcopyrite. It's not a high sulfide system, so it's and doesn't look to have any sort of major alteration overprint. It's been the structure here and there, but it doesn't look like a hydrothermal overprint or relationship there. In my experience of these sort of rocks, where if you can float the sulfides out, you'll end up with the metal. Yep. Thanks for that. The next question is the current MRE pit constrained? No, it's not, and it's so that sort of style of work hasn't been done. It's my preference to pit constrained things, but I suppose we're not making the call that this thing is commercial at today's prices. It's great strategic footprint to build on metal for the time that comes that all the analysts say will come when copper's in really short supply. So it'll have a different sort of commercial look about it, hopefully in the future, and hopefully we can in the meantime make a different scale or different grade look about it as well. Yeah. And then once the time's right, then you start to pick constrained things and put wrap real financials around it. it's nice to have a opening footprint that's 150 meters wide, so you don't have to squint too hard to see reasonable sort of strip ratios, which it kind of certainly helps the equation.
Yeah.
The copper price is something that, and the copper demand is something people talk to, but I've got to say, when we're scrolling around the world looking at copper projects that have been offered up, they're so often got some sort of fatal flaw that it might be a good accumulation of copper, but it's got no water, or it's got militant green action, or it's got some, it's next to a national park. There's some reason why it's going to be very hard to dig it up. And that's, I think the smart analysts are actually looking at the difficulty of getting going with big copper production. So there is a point of time where these deposits in flat and featureless Western Australia will have a real value, despite almost kind of regardless of their grade, because it can be done. But that's it's out in the future, but it's strategic.
It might be worth just asking at that point, Nick, just to give investors a bit of context, because as you say, good copper projects are hard to come by. What's a bit more of the backstory to Nanadie? It's located on a granted mining lease, so it's quite an advanced opportunity. But maybe if you could just give us a little more of the context of why it was sort of sitting in the group and how you came across it as well, I suppose.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting because it was found by the gold guys in the 90s with air core or RAB rigs, and so it skipped that sort of 60s and 70s phase of work, which was often really really deep and considered, and lots of really deep diamond drilling back then. It was a major that put the first traverses into it, and then it sat inside a company that was called Intermin, and it was predominantly drilling for gold around Kalgoorlie, and that probably took all of its public domain kind of attention. Intermin then sort of morphed its way over the journey to Horizon, that's also still around Kalgoorlie. But Binduli was really the project that got all the news flow back then. But they did some early work on it and drilled quite a few sort of shallow RC holes, and then it went through a JV with a company called Mithril, and they explored some geology out to the east predominantly, and worked on a massive sulfide idea they had there at a prospect called Stark, but it's on the same granted mining lease. And then it was handed back to Horizon and then bought by Cyprium, and Cyprium did some good work, and they did drill those deepest diamond holes, but they don't really cross the full timeline. But they ended up with Nifty, and that's been taking their attention ever since. With Nifty on the books and the demands up there, then they couldn't really give us the attention it needed. So it's fair to say it hasn't had a long spell of time as a lead property and being sort of considered and spoken about much. But what's really nice for us is it hasn't had that 1970s style, 20 deep diamond holes to understand where the edges are. That's all ahead of us.
Yeah, therein lies the opportunity. You mentioned earlier about the drilling on the gold targets. An investor has asked here if you can give us a bit of a clearer picture of the timing for targeting Nanadie with the drill campaign this year. If it was copper we were all talking about rather than gold, we'd be mobilising rigs straight away and probably doubling the number of holes there. But I think we're going to take a more scientific approach, and we'll get an expert in there or an independent guy to get into the field and through the chip trays and through the core and build a real geological picture. And the mission will be to find the edge, see if we can understand where the edges are, see if we can understand where the grade's going, and then by the second half of the year have the feel for what a really effective first program might look like.
We will drill there this year, and we'll drill there as soon as something really obvious pops up that we need to test. But yeah, if copper becomes something that is really on the charge, then this can get a lot of drilling.
Fantastic. Just one more question from online, Nick, if that's okay. An investor says, are any of your projects near operating plants for potential toll treating arrangements, or does the company have other ways to fast track production if you were to find an economic deposit?
Well, in the Yarrie and Kalgoorlie areas, absolutely. There's plants everywhere, and we could have looked at toll treating the property we sold last year, but there was some steps there and quite a bit of capex that would have been ahead of us, and the view was it was better done by the guys that own the mill, so we went that route. But conscious that in this metal price, you can make good money digging and trucking your own material and taking it to a mill. So yeah, if we get into a good grade mineralized position, it's right at surface, then there's nothing stopping us going that route. It's a pretty effective way of making money if you find the right deposit.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nick. Maybe just one final one to sort of wrap things up. You've transacted on Nanadie last week. Still got a strong balance sheet. Do you consider that the portfolio is now full enough, or are you still on the hunt for other opportunities? We'll keep looking. It's always the answer is yes. If the price is right and the metal's got potential to be added to, and we can use our skills, 100% yes. The trick is finding something where you can say that with confidence. My coffee's just arrived. It all depends on what's the best use of funds. When we saw Nanadie, we know the price is right. We know there's metal there. There's a time where this is going to have a lot more value. So that was easy for us. And we fired on because it barely made a dent in our cash balance. So yeah, the answer is yeah, we'll keep looking. At Yarrie, we're happy to add and subtract as we go. So we're not precious about the ground. We'll drop it if it's no good, but we'll certainly sell it if someone wants it, and we'll pick up stuff that we like the look of next door. Fantastic. Well, look, that was a great run through. We might wrap things up. I think we've covered all the questions, and I don't want to take up too much of people's time this morning. But Nick, it was great to have you on. Fascinating story, and I'm sure we'd love to have you back again in the months ahead as this story unfolds, hopefully with a big discovery.
Excellent, Nick. Great to talk to you all, and look forward to coming back next time.
Thanks very much. That was Nick Castleden from Solstice Minerals, and thanks everyone for joining us. A reminder that a recording of this webinar will be published later today through the company's socials and website, and through our arms as well. So thanks everyone for jumping on board, and have a great day. Thank you.